Hello, everybody. Welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Jose.
I'm Mike.
What did you think of Molly's Game?
Can I say, for the first thing, I've got a bit of a cold. So if I have the sniffles, if I cough a bit...
It'll be like a bell. Your voice.
trying to fill up on water.
So, Molly's Game. Stop making excuses.
I'm not making excuses. And spoilers to come.
Lots of spoilers.
So, Molly's Game. Aaron Sorkin's directorial debut. He's known for writing.
I was wondering actually about Jessica Chastain, because I think there's no actress I can remember at the moment that I like watching as much.
Amy Adams?
No, there's things about Amy Adams that annoy me occasionally. I mean, I like her very much as well, but she occasionally annoys me. But I just think that Jessica Chastain is so smart and she's so beautiful, and I really love looking at her, and she's such a good actress. But I think this film and her last kind of indicate a potential problem, which is that she's choosing her films on the basis of what she conceives as intelligent scripts. And they always end up being kind of interesting films with cracking dialogue, and actually a cracking part for her, in what I think are not very good films.
What was the film previously?
The last one was the one about the solicitor.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, because I thought the character in this was pretty much identical.
Yes.
Actually, no, that's not quite true. The one in that film was more cynical. This one actually, the quite interesting thing I think about the character in this one is that she's ultimately pretty honest.
Yes, I didn't believe it for a second. I think it's a problem in the writing.
I think it would. How so?
I don't think anybody's that pure. You know, especially if you've been running like a kind of a poker game in two coasts. You know, that all of a sudden you kind of risk your whole life in jail and everything so that you don't name names.
But that's the point.
I mean, please.
No, but that's the point. She doesn't. She keeps herself as clean as she can while she's running the games to prevent that possibility. She keeps it legal, and so at the end. Well, okay, I know what you mean. Like, you think she should sell out, basically, or she would sell out.
Well, I think, kind of everybody was involved in this. So the thing about keeping names because it might ruin some other person's family. I think it's a question of like ruining somebody else's family because of what they did wrong, or you saving your ass because of what you did. Why wouldn't you? I just don't get that.
Okay. That means you have a fundamental problem with, because I think, I can believe that someone has principles.
I believe that people have principles, but I also kind of don't believe that people are stupid in situations like that. And I don't think this is about principles.
I think it's what it comes down to is what it comes down to is she has a name to defend.
That's what she says.
I believe that.
Well, I didn't believe it. Okay, so that's,
okay. That's what that scene leads to. That scene's about getting out of her. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And when push comes to shove, she only has one thing left in the world, which is her name, and that's important to her.
Yeah, so that's not even true. She's got 2.5 million in collectible debts that she can collect. She's got like several million that the government is holding on to her and could hold on to later, and she's got assets. She's got a story to sell. So that's that was not true.
Right, but she's actually but the point is that by risking it all to go to jail, she's saying that isn't important enough to me. I can risk all of that as long as I'm not risking my name. That's the point of that.
I think that's what the film would like you to believe is the point of that. But I think the film is not being honest about it.
Okay.
And then I also kind of don't believe that that's a decision that people would make without, kind of being convinced of the various variables at play. And I don't think the film did that.
Okay. I mean, that's to me is the point where the film started to get good.
Yes.
And that's when I started to actually buy into it.
Well, I think that's the point where almost I groaned. And I find it phony. Just the same way that I find all its psychologizing phony.
Yeah.
So, I think it's one of those things that you read through it and you think, oh, the structure's interesting. Her character is certainly interesting. It's got cracking dialogue. And then, that conception of people and of society is, to me, really flawed. And not very enlightened. It doesn't show a good understanding of human beings to me.
Ultimately, you're saying you don't believe that this could have happened.
Well, it's based on a true story, so it clearly happened. But I think people are much more complex than this, and trying to whitewash out their complexity doesn't do anybody any favors. What I find is very flawed, which are the two absolutely central things in the film, is the reasons why she decides to plead guilty, and also the way that the film structures everything around her relationship with her father.
Yeah. Well, the father maybe we will get on to. I've got here. It's kind of what you get on Wikipedia, and sort of around that is, you don't get the kind of. I haven't read the book, right, and the book is obviously only one version of it anyway.
Yes.
So what it has here is she pleaded guilty to a lesser charge for her involvement in the operation and was sentenced to a year probation, pay a $1,000 fine, and perform 200 hours of community service.
Well, that's what the film tells us.
And that's what the film tells us.
But what the film doesn't make clear is the lesser charge. Because you're watching the film and you think this is what she's being charged with. It's not like some lesser charge.
That's true.
Anyway.
But I mean, what can I say? I found it believable that someone would, at the end of it... I mean, basically, the entire film, she hasn't been shown at any point to really be dishonest. She's a little bit cheeky when she steals the game from the guy who formerly was her boss. No. She steals all the clients and runs off and sets up her own game. That's more than
cheeky.
That's more than cheeky, right? That's
robbery.
No, it's not.
Yes,
robbery.
It is. I mean,
not taking the clients.
No.
It's their choice whether they stick with it.
No. There are, you can't just think about goods as things. Goods are structures and relationships. And actually, if you were to walk off, at a talent agency with somebody else's clients, right, that would be considered theft. And actually, they do everything possible. They lock people's offices down to prevent them from doing that kind of thing. Yeah, that is what she does.
He should have been smarter.
Sorry?
He should have been smarter when he fired her. He should have.
Yeah, well, the Indians should have been smarter. Like in North America as well. That's a kind of,
I think that's quite comparable.
Well, it is. She's a crook. It's like saying, okay, if you've been robbed, you should have been smarter. You should have had better security. You should have hired a thug to be outside your house. It's your fault you got robbed. That's what you're saying.
Well, no, what I'm saying is it's still fair enough to say don't go into rough areas, in town. Stick to lit streets. It's not saying it's your fault if you get robbed, but if you were stupid enough to let her away with all your clients.
You're trying to tread the line that the film does, which is she's basically a nice person, except...
No, I didn't say nice. I said fundamentally pretty honest.
Okay. And she is. I mean, the film definitely wants to give you that impression. And Jessica Chastain makes that very convincing in a way. But the thing is that the film denies you all kinds of information that, I would have liked to have known. So we see that she has a lot of drugs. We actually don't get to see how the drugs begin to affect her judgment. Right? She doesn't seem to have any personal life at all in the 10 years that the film covers.
No, I mean, Miss Sloane did the same thing. The one about the lawyer, the previous one.
Yeah.
They did pretty much the same thing. That's what I'm saying. The characters are pretty similar. That, a woman who's kind of driven and obsessed by her job, basically.
Yeah, but she's driven and upset by her job.
And I think she takes drugs in that as well.
But she's in her 20s, and you have no sense of a sex life. I mean, I'm not saying... that she should have been given a boyfriend or something, but some indication that she's a fully rounded human being, not just like this pure conscience. And, so the film likes to have it...
Let's not overdo pure conscience.
Well, the thing is, I think the film likes to have it both ways. Okay. On the one hand, she's running a poker game. On the other hand, they make her seem like Mother Teresa.
No, I don't think
Yes, they do.
No. I mean, I'm just saying you're wrong about it. I think she expected to be more honest than it is.
The script wants to go there, right? But for example, the moment where, the mafioso, the meeting with the mafioso, who come in, who arrange to have her beaten up later, I would have liked kind of all of those things to be tied in better together to a sense of her declining, right? Of the increased use of drugs, the increased illegality of the game, the increase in the number of money that she's raking in, and the risk that represents. Right?
I agree.
So,
I do agree. I think there are parts. I think the story's a little too slick. I don't like a lot of the narration, to be honest. I think it's kind of glib, and although it kind of you end up with scenes that are very enjoyable and kind of complete. Actually, there's connective tissue, or there's a kind of some of the underlying drama seems to be light or missing. I do agree with you, but I don't. But and that's why I say actually I think the film starts to come good once you get into that final act and kind of consequences start to become more manifest, more realistic.
Also, Sorkin is not a director. You know, there's not a single memorable shot or memorable staging. Like, you know, he has the dialogue and close-ups carry everything.
Yeah. Well, he's heavy on effects right at the start. The film opens with Molly telling the story of her attempt to become a downhill skier on the US Olympic team, and it's scuppered when she hits a stick and falls and breaks her back. Which is a great opening scene. There's momentum and there's a story behind it, and but he's heavy on the kind of visual effects when he's talking. You know, it's overlays on the screen that show you the angle of the slope, and then it shows up the Great Pyramid to show you it's the same angle and things like that. And you're watching it going, oh, this is very overdone.
Yes,
I think calms down. That calms down.
I mean, it showed no imagination, no visual imagination. I mean, you know, the closest they got to it was when they were playing the poker game, and you know, you had at the bottom of the screen the hand that they could have gotten, or
where it takes off from TV presentations of poker.
but exactly right. So
yeah, absolutely. But
So,
I mean, apart from that, like when it comes to staging or blocking, there's nothing that strikes you when you think back. It's all there to show off performance, basically.
yes.
I mean, that's why Sorkin has a reputation, is because of his dialogue ultimately, and I think his dialogue, when you find an actor who can deliver it, it sings, you know, and he's been fortunate, and I think kind of when you look at the dialogue on the page, it speaks for itself, like it tells you how it should be delivered. I think, which is quite. That's quite good dialogue, I think. It's got a personality just in the words, and then someone like Jessica Chastain, or if you think back to The Newsroom, I think, the girl who plays Sloane Sabbath, I can't remember her name. There are certain people who've had his dialogue, who use it really, but they get it.
Yes.
I think Jessica Chastain is one of them.
Yes. Well, you know, the audience at the screening that we saw it responded very much to some of the lines. Yeah.
Yeah, there were laughs. It's quite a full cinema.
Yeah. So not as often as one might think, but there were some lines that just zinged. You know, that kind of the audience got immediately. But I don't think it's enough. You know, for a film.
No.
So I found it very disappointing. And actually, there were a couple of things that just was more than disappointing, that I just despise, you know. And one was the way, the whole thing, the whole discussion in the film about psychoanalysis, you know, which begins in a dialogue at the table where Molly has a critique of it, and of course her father's a therapist, and so it's a veiled attack on him. But then actually kind of, the way that everything is neatly wrapped up with a conversation in the park between, father and daughter, where he says, this usually takes years, but you're not paying, so, I'll give you the answers, really.
That scene annoyed me.
And I thought it was like, it made me ill.
Oh, that scene had a huge amount of just, he shows up out of the blue to fix her problems. It was, like, cause it's not been really an ongoing thing. You've seen the dad a few times, but he really mainly showed up at the start of the film. And so he comes back in pretty much from out of nowhere and fixes everything. It's real Deus Ex Machina stuff from the dad.
It's terrible.
It's bizarre. And I don't mind the two of them having a reconciliation and a conversation about everything that's happened between them.
I think
it's
a betrayal of the film.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, one of the, I think it's a fault, but it can also be seen as a very interesting fault that, you have this character, and there's kind of, she doesn't have a boyfriend, what I find the fault is that she's not shown to have a sex life. But actually it's good that she doesn't have a boyfriend, that no particular man is kind of, significant in her life in that way, right? So, so you make her absolutely the center of the film to do what? So that instead of being rescued by a man, she could be rescued by daddy. It's even worse.
Yeah.
I hated it.
and that comes hot on the heels of Idris Elba as her lawyer,
Yes.
defending her to the hilt
Yes.
in a speech in a conversation between her and the prosecution. The government's after it at this point, and it's a quite impassioned speech and it's quite convincing, but it has this thing of he's saving me, you know.
Yes.
It's like she's. I mean, I suppose there's something interesting about it insofar as what he's saying to them about the kind of the content of her character and the way she's conducted herself is stuff that she hadn't really considered herself.
Yes.
You know, when someone says something nice about you,
Yes.
and you didn't really realise that other people saw that, or you'd even see that, that's kind of interesting. But it still has this tone of saving the day.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there were certain things that I liked about this film. I actually liked all the poker stuff, you know, and the poker games and the relationships between the players and, you know, kind of the types of players. All of that stuff I found interesting. As somebody who doesn't understand a thing about poker, I just found it interesting. So he made that interesting to me.
There's a famous actor in these poker games, which is Michael Cera. Although through the narration, because the narration I think is supposed to be sort of what was told in her book.
Yes. It's her point. It's her telling the story.
Yeah, it's her telling the story within the film. So through the narration, she's known as Player X. He's known as Player X. But you can see it's Michael Cera. He's right there, and he's very good. He's smug and all the rest.
I like Michael Cera's performance very much for the reasons that you mentioned. I thought Idris Elba is at the most appealing that I've seen him in a long time. Right. So, you know, he's not dazzling you, but at least he's not bad, and he's got a lovely presence.
I agree with you. I like him. I think he's an interesting character. He's the kind of guy, he takes a chance on her when he shouldn't really.
Yes.
And he has this relationship with his daughter, which is... It's interesting. It's there to mirror Molly's relationship with her
father. It's also there...
It's quite touching, I think.
I like it.
He clearly loves her and he cares for her and he's hard on her.
Yes.
And
I think, you know, there's an attempt to make that to racialize it in a way. So, like saying, you know, this wonderful father and this really kind of lovely girl studying so hard, they're black, right? Like, you know, so I think there's an effort in the present culture to at least kind of afford some kind of representation to that kind of... But I found the film very dissatisfying. And actually I feel it's interesting because on the one hand you say it's intelligent and there's so much intelligence behind it. You know, and it's not terribly, you know, directed or anything. But actually, I think that there's something to me so much more unsatisfying about something that is like intelligence half-baked or, you know, entire components missing. Like, I really think the direction is a problem. Not because what we see is so terrible, how we're shown it is so terrible, but actually because a really good director could have brought so much more. So much more dimensions to, you know, what we're shown and how we're shown it and how dramatic that's made to seem. Yeah. I think there's a whole dimension of the film missing.
You feel like the film could have been so much more expressive.
Yes.
In so many ways. I mean, I'm surprised that you haven't used the word schmaltz yet because that's how I started to feel. Which is not normally we're the other way around. And I'm the one who loves that stuff. But in this film, I was actually going like, when the slightly schmaltzy elements started to kick in, and like a bit of lovely guitar music was playing towards the end. I thought, I was kind of thinking, this film deserves more. This character deserves more. Actually,
yes.
This the character of Molly.
That's a really lovely way of putting it. Actually, that the character of Molly and what Jessica Chastain brings to it deserves a better film.
Yeah, I think they kind of do. I think she deserves. Her character is intelligent and fundamentally decent, although we can kind of argue around the edges.
Fundamentally we can agree on.
And I think when it comes down to its daddy issues, and we're going to make up about that, I thought, oh god, this is not actually her character, and the film has been promising something richer than this.
Yes.
And
you know what I hated the most?
Go on.
Is when he buys them dinner. Fucking shit.
That's right. So she gets off with a much smaller sentence than she was expecting. Everyone was expecting about 3.5 years in jail or something.
So Daddy comes back. You know, he supports her emotionally. He's there to find his daughter not guilty and just get community service, or guilty but only with community service. And then, having done all of that, he even buys the whole family dinner. And actually, the narration tells you that he bought us dinner. Yeah. It wasn't just say we had dinner.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
he is on that. It was overly narrated. Speaking of which, my dad. It's 1st of January as we record this, and my dad sent me 2 text messages today that both said Happy New Year. One would have done.
Well, he loves you double.
I sent him one back. That's all you need.
Well, kind of, you shouldn't begrudge that. You should be.
Well, hey, look, when I'm being pursued by the government, and they've taken $5 million off me, and
he'll be there.
Yeah, then
buying you dinner.
Frankly, I will accept his explanation that it's all daddy issues. But until that time, you can send me one text and that will do.
Anyway, so a disappointment, but I suppose worth seeing for Jessica Chastain's performance.
Yeah, and Michael Cera's and Idris Elba's.
Yes. And actually, I don't know how to put it. There's something very interesting about Aaron Sorkin's writing. So as I said, it had a really interesting structure. He's drawn kind of really interesting characters. He's got lines that, like you said, sink. People respond to them. But on the other hand, there was also something very unsatisfying about the way that these people in this situation was fleshed out. And I think it's a bit of an interesting thing to think about. Is he just Flash, right? Because to me, there's a kind of a lack of complexity in these relationships. Or does he just maybe need 8 hours in which to flesh out those relationships? I mean, there is a problem because I do think that film is a poetic medium. And so things have to be condensed. You have to use kind of, metaphor and so on. Right, because it has to be told within like around 2 hours, 90 minutes, 2 hours, yeah. So maybe he maybe he's a TV writer.
Well, that may be the case. Don't forget A Few Good Men. Don't forget The Social Network, which is properly brilliant and structurally, I think, even more ambitious than this. I mean, this.
Who directed The Social Network?
David Fincher.
Imagine if David Fincher had directed.
I know,
and also I wonder if this might not be one of those movies that play much better on television than they do at the cinema.
I was kind of thinking that. I think it's certainly a film that if it popped up on TV, I probably wouldn't turn it off. I think a lot of Sorkin is like that as well. I think again it comes down to the snappiness of this dialogue and the speed of the scenes and the way they're structured. Like the scenes. In fact, I think this film may not meet his standard actually, insofar as his scenes have stories within them. They move from one place to another and they resolve. And I think actually in this they don't so much. They feel more kind of open-ended and loose, which is actually kind of dissatisfying. It's just not quite what I expected from him. I think, although there is some very snappy dialogue and there's some great jokes, a lot of it is actually kind of loose, or looser than I would have expected from him. I don't know if that is down to the writing or if that's down to the way it's directed, but it's not. There is something kind of. This is like a 7 out of 10 sort of from him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas he's done, Moneyball and The Social Network and A Few Good Men, where everything is super fucking tight dialogue-wise and the structure of the scenes wise.
Anyway, I was very disappointed, and I was very much looking forward to it because it was like practically the only new film that's been showing it, like at Birmingham, and I think we should say no to it. I don't understand why film companies do this. Like the last few weeks in Birmingham, all you could bloody see was like Star Wars, right? Star Wars is playing in every cinema, including in all the art cinemas. It drives me crazy, right? And the shows are not even sold out. Like, there's an opportunity to be showing something else alongside kind of Star Wars. So for the people who've already seen that film to be able to continue to go to the cinema.
It's what bloody Star Wars does. I mean, Tarantino got really annoyed at them when they came out with The Force Awakens. Because there's a 70mm cinema, he was releasing The Hateful Eight at the time, which was filmed on 70mm and all the rest, like his Tarantino way of doing it proper, or whatever. And they had a pre-existing deal with a cinema. I forget which one it is, but some big cinema in LA that was going to show it. And Star Wars basically forced the cinema to drop it to play Star Wars instead. I think it might have been. I think it was resolved, but nonetheless, that's a pretty shitty thing to do, and that's what Disney does. Yeah. Disney's taken everything over. They've got Fox now.
Yes.
They've got. I think are they in Marvel as well? Isn't Marvel a Disney thing?
Yes, I think it is.
So before you know it,
they'll own the world.
They'll own the world.
Anyway, that I just thought we'd mention that because the thing is, I don't think they sell any more tickets. No screening that we've been to was actually sold out. There are no lineups to go into the cinema. There are no queues for anything, right? So the thing is that a film with what is it, 11 screens or 12 screens?
A cinema, a multiplex with 12 screens.
Yeah, you could be showing other things. I think they get more customers if they had a more diverse program, and if you didn't have like a screening of Star Wars every half hour, because they're not sold out.
Yeah.
So
that's risk for you, isn't it? No one likes risk.
Anyway, when I was waiting for you at the cinema, it felt like a desert. There was almost no one there. I was surprised when we actually went into the film and there were people.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We saw it late though, but to be fair, they were already in there. We were 15 minutes late coming into it. Everyone.
So we didn't miss the beginning of the film.
No. We missed the most of the trailers, and adverts, but no, we don't miss the start of the film. But people were in there, in advance of that. But we should say that because we've been Hollywood heavy basically since we started this.
Well, we're restricted by what's available in Birmingham.
Yeah, up to a point, but like there is stuff around, and I think we could do a better job, as you said, of seeing it. Like it's not we are in second city, right? It's not impossible to see other things.
It's pretty bad, but not impossible.
So in the next few days, we're seeing Human Flow.
Yes.
Which is the Ai Weiwei film.
Yes, documentary.
Happy End.
Yes.
Which is the new
Haneke.
Haneke. And Mountains Made Apart, which actually I don't know anything about.
Well, the director's name is something like Zhao Jing. He's a very famous Chinese director.
Shall I find it?
Yes, please. It'll still be a problem pronouncing it. I'm sure we'll pronounce it wrong, but at least let's make the effort.
Mountains Made Apart. Jia Shanki, I think.
Okay.
Which, so know nothing about that. Yeah. But point is, we are going to see 3 non-English language films.
Yes.
As far as
finally.
I'm assuming that Haneke is not English language. I think it's set in France, isn't it?
I don't know, actually. Well, you know how it is with these things. I'd like to read as little as possible in advance.
Well, so would I, but I would like to know if it's English language. I mean, that's fair enough. It stars Isabelle Huppert and Jean-Louis Trintignant.
That sounds French to me.
Sounds pretty bloody French. Language, French and English. So. Point is, we're not seeing Star Wars for the next few days.
Good. So we won't do a third podcast on Star Wars. We didn't get a very good listenership on the second.
Well, I think everyone's been waiting to see it, so we don't spoil it for them, which is fair enough. But Dumbledore dies.
All right. So let's end it here. Actually, I think
Anything to sum up Molly's game with?
It's a really intelligent film that's not complex enough as a film to support the brilliant performance that Jessica Chastain gives.
Fundamentally, it ends up going down roads you've seen before and trying to hit pretty hackneyed emotional beats, which is a real shame because there's material in there.
Yes, good.
That deserves more.
Good. Bonsoir.
You know.